Hey, this is TJ Hafer, and I'm bringing you a preview of A Total War Saga Troy. We got to check out the campaign game for the first time here. I'm playing as Menelaus, the king of Sparta, whose wife Helen was stolen and taken away to Troy, which is sort of the inciting incident for the entire Trojan War. This map basically covers the Aegean Sea, Greece and Anatolia, what is today Turkey. And this is around 1300 BC, so we're talking way further back than Total War has ever gone into history before. And you can see, the uncovered or the covered areas of the map rather have this kind of like ancient parchment sort of look to them. You can see the stylized, mythic-looking mountains that kind of ring the edge of the map. And then when you zoom in, one thing you'll definitely notice is that these settlements are not really what we tend to think of when we think of European or Mediterranean history. If you hear ancient Greece, you might be thinking of like big, giant marble columns and like grand temples and stuff like that. But this is the Bronze Age. This is quite a bit further back. Even in the areas of Europe we would think of as highly developed, like somewhere like Sparta that we have here, it's still these kind of earthwork buildings that are sort of loosely spread out and dirt roads, and it's a lot of the starter infantry units are basically like naked guys with clubs. Like this is way back in the old days. It's like over 1,000 years before the birth of Julius Caesar. And I really like the way that this map and just kind of the interface and all of the aesthetics take you back to that time. I feel kind of transported in a way that I don't with all historical strategy games, just because it's an era I'm not as familiar with. They also model that barter was a big deal in this time period. There wasn't a lot of coinage. Gold does kind of exist as sort of a medium of exchange. It facilitates trade deals more than anything else. But your main resources are going to be food and bronze for raising units, and then stone and wood for creating buildings. And you'll be dealing with those more often than you'll be dealing with gold. As you can see here, I'm buying some food for gold, but that's really all that gold does. It doesn't, you don't spend it on anything like you would in other Total War games. See here, I have the favor of a couple of gods at the beginning of this battle. This is a little bit later on when I was sieging down Crete. You can basically, by building temples and by giving offerings, you can gain the favor of the different gods at 3 different levels that provide some increasing faction-wide bonuses. They're not like overtly supernatural, like you can't call down Zeus's thunderbolt. There's no actual magic, but it's more modeling, this is what people believed at the time. So yeah, if we make a lot of sacrifices to Ares, our troops are going to feel inspired in battle. There's also specific prayers for each god where you can give a sacrifice to get an additional bonus. And then there's something called a hecatomb, which is an offering you can give them that will boost up their favor for each of those individual gods. And it gets more expensive the more gods you are favoring. So you'll have to decide if you want to like go all in on 1 or 2 of them, or if you want to try to kind of keep all of them happy. A lot of that's going to come from which temples you decide to build. Obviously, you have a limited number of slots. We also have military buildings that can unlock higher tier military units here. Most of the high tier units require bronze to build, and then they also have a maintenance cost of bronze per turn. So securing bronze is going to be really important if you want to be able to use the heaviest, sturdiest infantry units. Once again, we have cities, and then we also have smaller settlements that are focused on producing one type of resource. The victory conditions include Homeric victory, which is kind of following the story of the Iliad. For Menelaus, we have to destroy the city of Troy, we have to destroy, Paris and Hector, we have to get Helen back, and then we also have to own the settlement of Knossos. And Total War victory is kind of more like a traditional victory where you just have to own or capture a certain number of settlements. You're also going to have to defeat an antagonist faction, which is basically when we get far enough into a campaign, when you get strong enough, the other side, whether that be the Achaeans if you're the Trojans, or the Trojans if you're the Achaeans, are going to consolidate under one surviving character and get some bonuses just so they can be a good rival. So here's Menelaus here. We've got his character card. He's the faction leader we're playing with. There's going to be 8 playable factions, 4 Achaeans and 4 Trojans. He's a Homeric character, which means he can't actually die under natural circumstances. He can just get wounded and he goes away for a while. Sort of the same way epic heroes or legendary lords work in other Total War games. Some of these traits he starts with, some of them he can get by his actions on the campaign map, fairly similar to how Total War Warhammer does it. And then the talent tree basically lets you have an A or B choice at each level of experience, and then usually there's some little extra thing that you can unlock off of whichever A, B choice you picked. Generally, it'll be a choice between, you know, making him more defensive versus making him more aggressive. We've also got mounts, shields, weapons, and followers and items that can be used to further customize these characters, which is pretty cool. Menelaus has a couple of unique abilities. One of them is Spartan Colonies, which is if there's an unoccupied settlement within your line of sight, you can pay some money to settle it immediately. He also has Call to Arms, which means he can recruit from the troop roster of any faction that he is allied to, which gives him a pretty wide range of units available from the beginning. We can even see the Harpies here, which are not actually mythological creatures, but they are mythical. They're doing this truth behind the myth sort of thing, where it's like, oh yeah, we don't actually have centaurs, but we have horsemen. We don't actually have a cyclops, but they have like a big guy with like an elephant skull on his head. Kind of thinking along the lines of what might have been the real things that inspired these different myths. I also got to try out Paris of Troy a little bit. His mechanic is very much based around keeping Helen happy and keeping Helen near him. He fights better when she's nearby. He also has very good archers, but then if you're bringing Helen around with you on your campaigns all the time, that makes her more vulnerable to be captured by the Achaeans and brought back under their control. So you have to be a little bit cautious with it. For more on Total War Troy, check out our battle preview gameplay, and for everything else, keep it right here on IGN.